Well, hey there, everybody. It's your boy, Mr. Perry, and here we are continuing through Unit 5 with Lesson 3. Today, we're going to talk about comments, preconditions, and postconditions. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So hopefully by now, you're already aware of the fact that in any programming language, comments and documentation are a really important aspect of basically programming it at any kind of professional level. They serve a number of different purposes. First off, comments and documentation make your code more readable to others. So if you're going to share your program code with other people, you want them to be able to understand what it's doing. And again, one of the ways that you can do that is by adding appropriate comments and documentation. They are absolutely essential when developing a program on a team. You want to be able to share your program code with other people, and basically all be collaborating on a program at the same time. And so adding those signposts in there in terms of like what's happening with different portions of the code are really, really important. And then finally, they help you debug, especially when you haven't looked at your program in a long time. So if you're developing a program and then you take a couple months off and you work on something else and then you come back to your program and let's say you've got to fix something. If you don't have those comments in there, it's going to be really hard for you. It's going to take you a while to really just kind of go back through and find where the bugs are and figure out how to fix things. So even just taking a quick second to add a single line comment like checks whether anyone has won the game right before you get to this method header called check win. These are the kinds of things that allow for an easier time for other people to look at your code, for you to go back through your code. Comments and documentation are, how you make that happen. Now, in Java, there are three ways to add comments. First off, you can do single line comments, which are just //, and then you explain the code snippet. So single line comments typically describe just a small section of your program code. Sometimes it's even just a single line that you're describing. But there you go. Single line comments // and then you can just type in whatever you want. And as long as it has // before it, then the compiler knows this is not program code. I don't need to run this code. I can just skip over it and then see what's down here. You can also do a multi-line code by doing /**, and then you would go on and explain a code segment. And then when you're done with the explanation, you do */ again. So a multi-line comment would typically be used to describe a larger section of code. And not just like a small section, but like kind of a larger segment. And so you could do something like this, /**. The following methods are all designed to allow players of the game to use the arrays of scores to check several conditions which impact the gameplay. And then */. So I've got 4 lines of text here, but again, the compiler knows when it hits this to basically skip everything until it hits this. And then, go on and compile the program code that comes after. But a multi-line comment would typically describe a larger section of a program. So I could have this here, and then I could have all of my methods that come after. And I would also have the option of adding single-line comments for each individual method if I felt it was necessary. But a lot of what we're going to talk about today is what's called JavaDoc documentation. And so for JavaDoc documentation, you've got /**, and then you explain the entire class file, and then */ when you are done. And a while back, I wrote a Java program called the memory game. And what the memory game is, that's the one where you get a bunch of cards and you lay them out in a grid, and then you flip them over 2 at a time to see if you make a match. And so my JavaDoc documentation for my memory game might look something like this. It would start with the name of my class file, which is memorygame.java. And then you see it's got my name, it's got the date, and then it's got just a general description of what the memory game file is and what it's designed to do. So this class represents the memory game, where players can test their memories by placing cards in a grid and then turning them over 1 at a time to find matches. So let's go ahead and break down what JavaDoc documentation actually is. So JavaDoc documentation is an industry standard for creating and sharing Java programs. Most of the comments are simply to identify what the program does, who made it, and how current it is. However, some of the comments actually help create a website that explains the details of the class file, And I'll show you what that looks like a little bit later in the lesson video. But let's go ahead and talk about how to do JavaDoc documentation. So you start with / asterisk asterisk, like I did here. And then you have asterisk / on separate lines. And this basically forms the beginning and the end of the documentation. So the compiler knows when it hits this, skip everything until it gets to this, and then whatever comes after that is going to be, program code that should be compiled. All right. So at author, this is where you have the programmer's name, and then if you want to, email and contact info. So here's where you identify the author or authors of the program code, and then provide contact information if desired. Next, you have at since, and this is where you have where you put either the date that you last updated it, or this could be the version number, which is also commonly sometimes put under at since. But basically, you just want to identify when the code was developed, or you want to provide the version of the code in which new items were added. So if you create a version of a program and then you create another version of the program where you add new methods, then you would go ahead and identify that this is the newer version. So this would be, version 1.2, 1.3, or 2.0 if you want to. And then finally, you just need a general description of the class file. So you briefly explain what the class file is designed to simulate or what it's designed to do. So this is an example that I found online of JavaDoc documentation, and it doesn't follow the exact same order, but it basically gives you an idea of what it looks like. So this is just a real simple hello world program that is designed to print hello world, but the JavaDoc documentation is up here. You've got your description of the class file right here. You've got at author, author's name. They did do at version, and this is version 1.0, and then at since you've got the date. So same basic ideas. All right, well, you can also use JavaDoc documentation on your constructors as well as your methods. And so if you're going to do JavaDoc documentation for your constructor, it would follow this pattern. Description of the constructor, and then you're gonna add what are called preconditions and postconditions, and then at param. So we're going to describe what all of this is in just a second, but as you can see down here, public memory game, string player, int num cards. So this is my constructor that is fully parameterized. And so again, the JavaDoc documentation would come before that. So let's go ahead and get into what this would look like. So first I need to describe the constructor. So the constructor takes the player name and the number of cards. Easy enough. The next thing I would want to do is add what are called preconditions and postconditions. So for preconditions, you got to ask what must be true in order for the constructor to work as intended. And for this game, you have to have at least 2 cards in order to get a match. And the game allows you to choose up to 100 cards, in which case you would be finding 50 matches. So for the precondition, I could do it like this, where I say num cards must be greater than 2, but also less than or equal to 100. I could also write it out using words. I could say num cards must be greater than 0 or less than or equal to 100. But in either case, basically, it's describing the same thing. I have to have at least 2 cards, but not more than 100 cards in order for this game to work. So that is the precondition for my constructor. Post conditions, you ask what must be true after the code segment is executed. So after my constructor is done, what must be true? Well, the way my program is designed, after the constructor is created and called, a grid of num cards is created. So that's basically the result of calling the constructor. And then, so we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into preconditions and postconditions. Preconditions is, again, just like any condition that must be true for your method code, for your method code to work, or for your constructor to work. So it's the assumption that parameters have values or are not null. That could be a condition. That could be a precondition. Preconditions could also be that parameters need to be within certain ranges or certain values, which was the case with my memory game constructor. Now, the methods could check for these preconditions, but the precondition is what the method expects in order to do its job properly. So that's basically what a precondition is. It's just, any value, anything that's probably tied to how the method works or what the constructor is doing, what parameters are being passed in, and just basically making sure that they actually have the appropriate values. So again, for mine, num cards had to be greater than 0, and it also needed it to be less than or equal to 100. Those are both preconditions that are important for num cards. Now, post conditions is a condition that is true after running the method. So whether it's a method or a constructor, it's just basically what needs to be true or what must be true after this is done running. So it is what the method promises to do. Post conditions describe the outcome of running the method. For example, what is being returned or the changes to the instance variable. If a method changes an instance variable, the post conditions would describe that change. So again, for post conditions for my constructor, after the constructor is called, a grid of num cards is created. And then finally, we're going to get to at param. So basically, you want to describe each parameter for your constructor or for your methods. So you use at param to describe the parameters. So at param player. Player is my first parameter. And then I just describe it. It's the player's name. Super easy. And then at param num cards. Num cards is my next one. So I, put that here. And then I just describe it. The number of cards the player selects. So pretty straightforward. Now we're going to get into JavaDoc documentation for methods and constructors here. And we're going to start looking at the tag at param as well as the tag at return. But again, I mentioned earlier that there's a connection between these comments and the online JavaDocs file. So we're going to actually hop out of the slideshow momentarily, and I'm going to take you to this website, this is basically the online documentation that Oracle publishes for Java. So it includes all of the methods, all of the classes that are built into Java, all of the methods, what they do, and so on and so forth. So here we are looking at the string class. And as you scroll down, you'll notice that it describes the string class constructors. And then as you continue to scroll down, it describes the string class methods. And again, there's a bunch of different methods. But what happens is the at param and at return, these little tags right here, basically helps create those websites. So as classes are added to the official Java library, these little tags basically create, it's connected to HTML, and they help create that website. So now let's go ahead and look at documenting methods. So when you're documenting methods, you have to describe what the method does. Once again, include preconditions and postconditions. You also want to describe the parameters, but then you also want to include what is returned, if anything. So here we are looking at the method check_win, which is designed to go through an array of card objects and to see whether or not the player has won the game. So once again, we'll start with / ***, and then */*, and we'll go ahead and start filling in these gaps. So again, we need to describe what the method does. So I would start with checks whether the player has won the game. That's essentially what this method is designed to do. Then I need to do my preconditions and my postconditions. So preconditions for this one is that game cards has at least 2 card objects. And then postconditions would basically say the game cards that are in here will remain unchanged. It's going to return a value, and basically nothing is going to happen to these game card objects. They'll go ahead, or the card objects, they'll just basically remain the same. And then I need to describe my parameters. And so at param game cards is the name of my parameter, and it is an array of cards used in the game. And then finally, I need to do at return. So what is returned by this method, if anything? Well, this is a return method. It doesn't say public void check_win. It says public Boolean check_win. So there would be a return value. And so I say at return, and then I just say what is returned. Returns true if the player wins the game, false otherwise. So there you go. Let's go ahead and get to our lesson review. So first off, comments are ignored by the compiler and are not executed when the program is run. There are three types of comments, which include the multi-line comment, which again generates a block of comments, // which is your single line comment, and then your Java doc documentation, which are used to create the API documentation that Oracle publishes for the official Java library. A precondition is a condition that must be true just prior to the execution of a section of program code in order for the method to behave as expected. There is no expectation that the method will check to ensure the preconditions are satisfied. So again, sometimes the method can actually check whether or not the preconditions are satisfied, such as if you were going to be had a program that divided numbers, you can say that the denominator should not be 0. But in that case, you would probably want to go ahead and have the program code check whether or not the denominator is 0. But you don't have to. Again, there is no expectation that the method will check to ensure the preconditions are satisfied. So it's sometimes important just to go ahead and have the preconditions in there. A post condition is a condition that must always be true after the execution of a select section of program code. Post conditions describe the outcome of the execution in terms of what is being returned, or maybe the state of an object. And then finally, programmers write method code to satisfy the post conditions when the preconditions are met. So there you go. You now have a enhanced understanding of documentation in Java, and we've learned a little bit about Java docs documentation. Go ahead and leave a question or a comment at the video, and I will see you guys in class.